Alright, so this video is to show you how to do Python assignment number 1, beginning to end. This will tell you most of what you need to know. First thing you need to do is you need to open idle, and you'll go into the little white search bar here and you will type idle. Yours is going to look a little different than that. It's probably just going to say idle.exe, but you're looking for idle, and when you open idle you're going to get this window. This is the interactive execution window that I told you about. This is where you can type code and it will immediately execute it. So for example, if I said x equals 10 and y equals 30, and I say print x times y, hit enter, it will actually give me the answer. In Python, you don't have to declare variables, you just use them, so that's what I did. And the print function allows you to print not just strings, but you can also put mathematical operations inside it or whatever. Now, interactive execution is not where you want to be for this assignment though, and for most assignments what you're going to want to do is go to File, New File. It's going to open a second window that looks very much like the first, only it does not have this first part where it says Python 3.7.3, doesn't have the little command prompt, which is what those little arrows there are. This is a window where you can actually type a complete script and you can save it to use later. If you were to type in your code here, there's no way to save this code. So this code just goes away when I close the window. This code, on the other hand, I can save as a file, which is what you're going to submit to me, is a copy of this file as a py file, which is basically just a text file with a .py on the end. So in this assignment, you are going to create some variables. You're going to create a couple of strings, you're going to create a couple of integers, and you're going to create a couple of floats. I'm going to show you some of this, but some of this you're going to have to sort of figure out on your own. So let's say I want to create, and I'm just going to use X, Y, Z, even though I tell you guys not to. In the assignment, it tells you what specific variable names you're supposed to use. So let's say I want to create an integer. To create an integer variable, I just give the variable a name, and I say equals, and then I put in a number. And when I put in a number that has no decimal point, no decimal places, that is automatically saved as an integer. You're going to create a string. If I create a string, the way I do it is I put whatever I want it to be in quotation marks. Now, Python knows that that is a string. A string is any variable that holds basically just text. Now let's say I wanted this to be a string, that is a string. Even though it looks like an integer, because I put it inside quotation marks, it is a string, and it is treated as if it is text, even though it looks like a number. That is different from this, which is a number, does not have the quotation marks around it, so it is treated as a number. I can use this one in math. I cannot use this one in math. Third thing that you're going to create is a float. A float is a number that has a decimal place. So 6.5 is a float. 6.59 is a float. 0.0015 is a float. Any number that has a decimal point or equates to a decimal point is a float. I could even say C equals 22/7. That is a float. It's two integers, but when you divide them, you get a decimal place, so it equates to a float. I can prove it if I say print C, which I will do in a second, but let me show you something. Before you can run this script, I've basically created a script here. It doesn't do much, it just declares a bunch of variables and prints out one of them, but it is a script. And if I want to run it, I have to save it first. And anytime I want to run something, I hit run and then run module, or you can just hit F5. If it has not been saved since your last change, or if it has never been saved, it's going to prompt you to save it. So I'm going to say OK. I'm just going to save this to my desktop as Python 1 video, and it's going to run it. And you'll notice that when I printed C, even though I said C is equal to 22 divided by 7, it came out with Z equals 3.142857142857143. So that is a float. That is a float. That is a float. That is a string. That is a string. That is an integer. So those are the different variable types. Now, this assignment mostly deals with using the print command. Print can do different things. Print can print out a string. It can print out two strings put together. And when I want to put two strings together, I can do it in two different ways. Way number one is to put a plus sign in front of them. Way number two is to put a comma between them. And it's going to do kind of the same thing, but there's going to be an important difference, and I'll show you what that is right now. So I'm going to run this, and you will see that when I used the plus sign, it did what we call concatenating. It stuck these two strings together and made a single string out of them. That is called concatenation. And you'll notice that this is part one, squished up against this is part two, because I didn't put any space in here. Now you'll notice here, this is part one, this is part two, has a space in between it. When you use a comma to put together multiple strings or strings and other things, it enters a space for you where the comma went, so you don't have to add in a space. Now I could manually add a space up here and get the same effect. And now they look just the same. Now there's something else important about the comma though, and here's what that is. If I want to add together an integer and a string like that, I can't actually do that, and you'll see what will happen in a second. Okay, I get an error, and this is a type error. And if you read the last line, it actually tells you what the error is. Unsupported operand types for positive, int and string. So yeah, real confusing, but basically all that is saying is you can't add an integer and a string. They don't go together. Now, if I want to string together an integer and a string, like I'm trying to make a sentence, then I can do this. It will let me do that. Whoops, I forgot to take out the one that doesn't work here. So you'll let me, you see it does let me string together the string and the integer by using the comma, but it does not let me string them together using the plus sign. The reason is it doesn't want me to accidentally confuse a string and an integer. So if I need to put together a big long thing, like let's say, here I'm gonna make a new one real quick and show you something. So we had this program that we had earlier, that we created earlier, where we, and I'm not going to take input for this, but I'm going to say x equals 6, y equals 7, and I'm going to say, I'm going to create a string. That's a keyword I can't use. I'm going to have a string that says the area of a triangle with, actually, a a height of, create a second one, and a width of is, oops, is equal to, okay, so let's say I have all these strings. I could say print string plus x. No, I can't do that. String, comma, x, comma, string 2, comma, y, comma, string 3, comma, and then I'm going to say x times y plus plus times 0.5. Okay, so what do you think that's going to do? Well, I will show you. I'm going to save this as, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Say this as triangle .py. I'm going to run it. And look what I get. The area of a triangle with a height of 6 and a width of 7 is equal to 21. So what this did was this strung together all these different strings that included both integers and strings, and it even did some math, and it threw that into, and it gave me a single printout. That's kind of the same thing you did when you were creating the calculator, the area calculator in JavaScript, whether you realize it or not. So this is something we do a lot in programming and in Python, is we have output, and we want to have the output show up as a actual readable sentence. And to do that, we have to string these together. And in Python, it's not going to let us put the plus sign there. And here's why. If I put the plus here, now it gets confused about whether I'm talking about adding strings together or I'm trying to do math. It doesn't want to let us get confused, so it doesn't allow that. Now, there is one exception to this, and it's a weird exception, but it is multiplication. It won't let you divide a string and an integer. It won't let you subtract a string and an integer. It will let you multiply a string and an integer, strangely enough. So let's say I say x is hello class, and I say y is equal to 47, and I say print x times y. Any guesses what's going to happen? Well, I will show you. So what it does is it prints this 47 times. So that's the only time where you can do math, sort of, between a string and an integer. Can't do it with a float. If I turned it into a float and I tried to run it, I get an error. If I tried to use division, subtraction, anything like that, I get an error. But I can multiply the two. Now, back to the assignment. So this assignment is basically creating 6 variables. Mine don't match the 6 I told you. You're going to create 2 integers, 2 strings, 2 floats. And then the rest of the assignment asks you to do different things with them. It asks you to string them together with spaces, without spaces, and so on. It asks you to try some things out. So that's all you need to know to do this assignment. Remember, the quarter's about to end, so do it quickly.